So, now that we've talked about general combat tricks that you can use anywhere, I think it's time we begin covering the various ways that Limbo can use its abilities to enhance certain missions. And since I, and probably a few of you, still don't have Limbo Prime yet and want to collect his relics as fast as possible, it might be best to start off with Excavation. Now, there are really only two strategies I found to be good here. The first is what you'll probably want to focus on in pug groups or whenever some form of nullification is around. Simply place a cataclysm with stasis on the excavator, refresh the abilities whenever they wear off, and defend it until it's done. Yes, I know that this is really basic, but basic stuff is often useful and there are a few ways to optimize it. First, you'll ideally want a small bubble setup for the strategy, since most enemies can only harm something that you're trying to defend if cataclysm or stasis goes down, and since smaller bubbles are usually harder for nullifiers to reach, and narrow-minded is already great for excavation thanks to its duration boost. Yeah, small cataclysm is very nice. In addition, having a large stasis cataclysm as your default is actually kind of annoying for this, or for defense for that matter, as it keeps enemies spread out and unable to move in on their own, which is far, far worse about slowing these missions down than even a strength-focused Nova setup. So the smaller your cataclysm is, the closer enemies can get on their own, which means all of those power carriers are clustered around the excavator instead of getting caught in different locations that are all hundreds of feet from the point on the edge of your cataclysm. As for why I suggest keeping stasis up all the time here, well, actually that's not very important if you're just dipping into an excavation or doing one that's low level. However, it doesn't take too many rounds before enemies reach a point where they can just destroy your excavators really fast if they do get near them. So keeping stasis up, it's safe and doesn't really add much annoyance unless your cataclysm is particularly large. Now, one last thing to mention before we move on to the other trick. Aim your cataclysms at the bottom of the excavators. As long as the base is covered, the excavator is safe. Nothing can harm it even if your bubble shrinks down to way smaller than the actual machine. But if the excavator's base gets uncovered at all, enemies can immediately start doing full damage to any point on it, even if the rest of the machine is completely covered by a cataclysm. I'm aware that this doesn't logically make sense, but it's one of those weird game things that you should just be aware of, and yeah. Anyways, yeah, I know this isn't a particularly complex or fancy strategy, but it's pretty safe, works well for any mission, and even under-geared Limbos can use it to some degree. Now, before I talk about the other, very powerful but far more situational strategy, I need to cover something that I mentioned in one of my first videos, but is really important to be aware of here. While they are both fairly short-ranged, Grineer napalms and infested power carriers can shoot through cataclysms. This means you need to either kill those enemies before they get too close to your excavators, or prevent them from getting close in the first place, which, yes, we know Limbo can do with his large bubble builds. Now consider this. Those new enemies never appear with any form of nullifiers unless doing Void Fissure missions. What this means is that since there is no way for them to break large bubbles, and no way for them to attack from long range, on Grineer or infested missions you can just set up a large bubble, activate stasis, and then if the excavator is fully charged and the cataclysm will keep those enemies away from the machine until it is done, you and your team can just abandon the point and go on to the next one. No need to defend the point anymore, nothing can reach it, nothing can harm it. This means that once you have figured out the timing, which is something you'll need to figure out yourself as it changes a lot depending on mods, since you can comfortably stop defending a point early and move on, you can shave, say, 50 seconds off of the time it takes to complete the excavation mission per excavator when working with a second defensive frame. So if you do, say, 32 excavations in one run, you can reduce the mission time by almost 30 minutes without actually adding any additional risks to any of the excavators, and you can optimize this a bit further if you can defend more than one additional point at a time. Now, there are some additional things to be aware of with this strategy. The first being, of course, that it doesn't work if playing a mission with nullifiers on it. If Corrupted or Corpus are around, this simply isn't a functional strategy. Keep it for dark sector missions like Heracon on Pluto, or places like Everest on Earth or Augustus on Mars. Also, while this setup will give you 50 seconds of safety, if you don't have the mods to just copy this build, You'll need to figure out the amount of time that a point is safe for by going in to an excavation mission solo and observing when napalms and infested power carriers can start hitting the point. Oh, and yes, I'm pretty sure you could toss stretch on and increase the safety duration of this setup further, as well as a couple of other mods. I know this, but I like to not rely on the void for all of my survivability as much as possible, and that is what this would have to cut into. Now, the third thing you need to know is that yes, this strategy really does require an additional defensive frame. While you can get it working for a while with any group as long as you can explain it to them, there will eventually be a point where you will not be able to defend a shieldless excavator. Taking this setup into pugs, even well-geared pugs, may not always give you the best results. Finally, don't worry about stasis going down unless you don't have enough energy to recast it. Stasis has infinite range, which means that as long as your cataclysm is still up and you have natural talent on, there is only like a half-second or so period in which enemies can try and attack the point. It doesn't matter how far off you are. Anyways, I think that covers everything you really need to know about excavation missions. Both strategies are quite powerful, and I hope you find them useful. As always, if you've learned something today, leave a like and subscribe, and good luck on your excavations. Farewell.